Last week we read something about harmony, which is a need both individually and collectively. The mother would tell us, reveal to us, of course we all know it, but it needs a constant reminder and a revelation, that the natural state of human life is one of progressive disequilibrium. While we all seek harmony, but quite naturally, human beings start from birth to death. There is a progressive disharmony at all levels. In fact, we see that from birth to death. When a child is born, there is a kind of harmony between his force of life and the body. And as he grows with the development of energies of life and thinking, mind, and further on as he begins to interact with the world at large, there is a progressive disharmony resulting in one kind of disequilibrium or the other. Normally in individual life, when disequilibrium takes place within an individual, of course there is nothing like an isolated individual, we label it as a disease of various kinds, but actually it's a disequilibrium as the mother has revealed to us, and one can see it. And she says if you touch the central point of the disequilibrium, everything else becomes all right. But if that point is not touched, then one disequilibrium follows upon another. One disharmony leads to another. You patch up this and the other one comes up. You patch up the second one, the third one comes up. That's why sometimes people are scared to go to doctors, because they go with headache, then it becomes hypertension, then very soon cholesterol is high. Cholesterol is controlled, then diabetes is detected, and we start with one medication and end up with 13, 14, and as they say, there are only two ways of getting rid of diseases, again semi-seriously. One is get rid of the doctor, second is death comes to deliver us, because otherwise it continues. This because of the very nature of life. It's nobody's fault. It's not that doctors are bad, they are very well-meaning people. It just happens because unless we touch the central point. It's equally true of collective life. In collective life, because harmony is even more difficult, even to hold the cells of the body together, the life force, the various thoughts is difficult task. Collective harmony is far more difficult, and the mother says it's only the divine who can realize this. And this is a work which no human being can undertake. And collective disharmony expresses itself in the form of collective maladies, various kinds of pathologies to which a collectivity may be prone, a group may be prone. And we try to correct one, another comes up. You try to correct second, third one comes up. Till one touches the central point. And if we correct that, then everything else gets right. So the first task is to find the central point. So long as we are in lower nature, this central point obviously has to be the highest point within the ego, which last year we were sharing. The highest point within the ego can be reason, or it can be... Reason it's very difficult to harmonize on the basis of reason. Or it can be an ideal. Ideal is the highest point. It's like a shadow cast from the higher into the lower nature. So each one finds his own ideal and tries to harmonize the different elements around it. Very often one wants even a collectivity which is having the same ideal. But the problem again is that there are different ideals, and it's very difficult to harmonize different ideals with each other. Somebody may have an ideal of love, charity, kindness. Another person may have an ideal of truth, justice. Each is a valid demand. And when we try to have the ideal of kindness and charity, justice is to be sacrificed. If one wants to establish the ideal of truth, then something else has to be kept into the background. So ideal is, yet it is the highest point that by which human beings try to harmonize, while we are struggling in the lower nature. Then there is another way which we read last time and even prior to that, to harmonize by dwelling in the self. This self which is behind all things, There is a very beautiful something of Aurobindo which I found, rather, which was given to me a couple of days back, thanks to Bimal Ben. It is from Aurobindo's writings. Live for God in thy neighbor, God in thyself, God in thy country, and in the country of thy foeman. God in humanity, God in tree and stone and animal, God in the world and outside the world, then art thou on the straight path to liberation. So this is the second way of having harmony, where we try to see the one divine behind all things, events, circumstances, stone, tree, bird, animal, sky, everything. But this leads us very far to a path of liberation. We are freed from what is called in the parlance of yoga as moha, the delusion which comes because of a separative consciousness. But for Aurobindo's yoga, even this is not enough, because it can lead us to a kind of a passive, quietistic, nirvanic silence, where we stand aloof and apart from the world and its working, like Shiva offering his breast to Kali's dance. So Aurobindo gives us a third mantra, a very practical, simple, direct mantra, but very deep and profound in its import, with which we had ended last time, to live in the mother. Now, what is the difference between living in the self and living in the mother? Are they not two ways of looking at the same thing? So here we have the dynamic side. Normally the self-realization projects one into the static side of liberation. Aurobindo has used the word static Brahman. One becomes a witness to everything, and one is unaffected personally, one is freed personally, but the world goes on as it is. But in this yoga, which is a yoga of transformation, Aurobindo brings it the dynamic side of the divine, and that side, in its highest point, in its highest mode, is none else but the embodied Divine Mother. So when we try to harmonize with the Mother in the center, living in her, living for her, living by her, if possible, then the whole yoga begins to take a different turn. It means to make choices, a constant choice, as Aurobindo says, between the truth that is descending and the falsehood of the lower nature. This becomes an inevitable consequence of living in the mother. Because in one of his letters, Aurobindo very beautifully says, yes, all this is the divine. Even the lower Prakriti in its most inferior mode is deriving its force and strength and power from the Divine Mother. But the sadhaka is asked not to identify himself with the mother in the lower nature, but with her in her higher nature, in the resplendent glory of her divinity, as is shown to the great seers, and as Aurobindo comes to reveal to us. That makes this yoga a yoga of perpetual choices, difficult and little different from the traditional paths, which means to balance things which appear as opposites. On one side, one has to walk with a firm foundation on equanimity. On the other side, there has to be a conscious, constant and integral choice. Normally when we use the word equanimity, we feel in that case one is unaffected and one doesn't make, it doesn't matter what is happening and where the universe is going. But here there is a double action. There is equanimity. Aurobindo in great detail would tell us in synthesis, there is not just passive equanimity, but a dynamic and active equanimity. So there is a constant and integral choice. On one side, equanimity which is unaffected. On the other side, there is an equanimity based on which we make choices. In other words, what it means is that no more to make choices under the impulsion of ego and desire. Basically, this equanimity means that we don't choose things which are preferential to our ego. And the mother reveals very interestingly that there are two ways human beings deceive themselves. One way that we deceive ourselves is that we live according to a certain ideal and we believe the whole world is like that and should be like that. And whatever is not like that, we think it is undivine. And then we become very uncharitable, and there is another further step. She says actually all that is hiding behind. Very often a saint is none else but somebody who has suppressed, or rather Sri Aurobindo has used a very interesting word, very revealing. Now, the media is bringing these truths out. That saint is someone who cherishes his sins in the secret. So it's not that he is free, but they are in the shadow. The shadow is there, dragging behind. But outwardly there is a sainthood. So Sri Aurobindo says we are not here for that kind of a saintliness, but for something much greater, much more dynamic and much more powerful. This is one kind of deception. There is another kind of deception which he says is worse. This is still all right because human beings are like that, we live like that, and it's better to be at least following virtue instead of vice. But to rise beyond virtue and vice, so there is second kind of deception which is far more dangerous, where she says we follow our own impulses, desires, preferences, and put upon it a spiritual tag. We justify it under a spiritual name. Oh, mother says so, mother wants this. So when it comes to my own weaknesses, I would say, I am being impelled by the divine Shakti. This is so easy. I am hearing the voice of the mother, God's command, and so on and so forth, where we justify all our difficulties, weaknesses under the divine name, which is the worst case, or we give a very plausible reason and excuse. Commonest is, I got angry because so and so behaved like this with me. Very obviously, there's no reason why I should spoil my blood pressure because somebody else is, getting angry. He is getting angry, he is already rising his blood pressure. I should feel sympathy and kindness. If not sympathy, maybe too big a word. Maybe pity for the person, because see, a person who is all the time angry, bitter, cannot smile, what a miserable life it is. And if possible, we should pray to the divine, please give him some cheer and smile. Poor fellow is not even able to smile. It's a miserable situation. One doesn't have to make it worse by getting angry, because it will make the other person worse, and of course it makes my blood pressure also rise. So why should one lose one's own sleep over something which somebody else is doing? This, of course, is a common form of self-deception. We don't even notice it as self-deception, but actually we give a plausible excuse and justification for our own reactions, which are nothing but based on the ego. The other side is where we give justification under the divine name, because we are very, harsh. So we say, mother was very strict. Now, this is not fair, She's very disciplined. She's also embodiment of love. She's also grace. She can also be Mahakali. She can be many things at once. And she can be that, because she is that. But when we try to play God, it's very, very dangerous. So this is on one side equanimity, on the other side a conscious choice. On one side faith, a faith which is unquestioning. Even if the entire world collapsed, we should be able to say with Sri Aurobindo, even if everything smashed, I would look beyond the smash to the new creation. How soon we lose hope? As if it was nothing but a flicker of a candle. Little event in outer life which is little disturbing. Oh, is really the divine there? Is really... The faith should be so vast. Even if the entire world were reabsorbed back, we should say it doesn't matter. Another creation will emerge. But His will be, because it's the decree of the Supreme. On one side, such a faith. On the other side, this faith should not turn into complacency. For faith too can be tamasic. Inertia is often justified under the name of faith. Or it can be rajasic, over-eager, wanting to change. Supermind has descended. We all should wake up every morning and become golden beings. So we start seeing color and light coming out of our body and showing others also. That's of course foolish. It's foolish enough to see it in oneself. So this is over-eager, over-enthusiastic faith. The other is a third kind of faith, sattvic faith. I have certain ideas, things should be like that. When they don't happen according to my ideas, I begin to lose faith. These ideas may be very nice, very beautiful, very high, noble, and yet the divine is infinite, and He works with an infinite love and wisdom. So we are supposed to harmonize faith on one side with a constant will for change. Normally, when we say faith, we say we should have faith, everything is fine, which means no will for change. But faith, such faith that even if everything collapses, our faith remains, and yet a constant, steady will for change towards a better and better. Similarly, we are asked to harmonize intuition with a discriminative intelligence so that we don't start mistaking all our impulses for the voice of a higher guidance and intuition. So this yoga walks on two things which appear as contradictory simultaneously. The ardor of a deep and passionate love for the divine, and yet this love should not become a blinding hindrance to the deeper voice and the deeper guidance. And yet, in all this, if there is one word which is the master word of yoga, this yoga, it is surrender. Self-surrender to the divine and infinite mother is, however difficult, is our sole refuge. This is the watchword of this yoga. So we read something about this passage, as we have said something about the practice of yoga this year, from Aurobindo's early writings. They have a unique flavor of their own. Of course, Aurobindo is, we have this in synthesis, the 4/8 chapter, which is at great length. Aurobindo has written that, but here he has written in a nutshell. It's very power-packed, like a very potent capsule. It is said in the Sanat Sujatya that 4 things are necessary for Siddhi: Shastra, Utsaha, Guru and Kala. So this we know Sanat Kumar, in fact, it's a lineage of sages, not just one sage. And it's there in his treatise that these are the 4 things which are necessary for arriving at the fullness and perfection of yoga. And almighty love and wisdom are at work for your uplifting. Therefore, never be troubled by the time that is being taken. Even if it seems very long, but when imperfections and obstructions arise, this yoga takes time. Any yoga takes time. And every yoga walks through a dense forest of vital nature where obstructions, difficulties, whether individually or collectively, are bound to arise. So what should be our state? Be apramat dhira. Apramat is one who is not swayed easily. We become easily swayed by all kinds of opinions and information and newspaper cuttings, and so much we are drowned by all this that we have little time to hear the one authentic voice. So be apramat and dhira, steady. Have the utsaha and leave God to do the rest. Time is necessary. It is a tremendous work that is being done in you. We sometimes undermine the work of the divine by being overeager, and we expect things very quickly. It's like wanting to undo everything and redo it within a moment and a flash. Aurobindo is reminding us it is a tremendous work. What is the work? The alteration of your whole human nature into a divine nature. The crowding of centuries of evolution into a few years. You ought not to grudge the time. It's bound to take time. Human machine for million years has moved along a certain axis. As some time back we were sharing, and Mother reveals to us that this harmony is the law of human beings. Put 2 persons in a room and they will quarrel. It's somebody was today morning pointing out there is some tree inside the ashram campus. No quarrel, something like that. Name of the flower. It's very nice, it's inside the ashram. One wishes it blossoms inside us, all of us. It's so natural for human beings. If you put 2 people together, they must quarrel, because as if it acts like a tonic and a digestive to human beings. And this is the way. But to lead it from that point where even alone we quarrel between our head and our heart. Leave a person alone on an island and he will start quarreling between one part of the mind and another part. Should I do this? Should I do that? And he will be torn in a quarrel. So it's our natural nature to change it into a spontaneous divine harmony which at each point, minute or moment expresses itself in infinite ways, is truly a Herculean task, and we should little bit sympathize with the poor divine who has taken this vast labor. So Aurobindo is telling us there are other paths that offer more immediate results, or at any rate, by offering you some definite kriya, you can work it yourself, give you ahankara. So it's like Aurobindo's yoga and traditional paths can be compared to, if one has to compare, learning sea, swimming in the sea, not just swimming in the sea, swimming so that you can map the entire sea, and learning in a swimming pool. Learning in a swimming pool is very simple. You have point A, point B, you have to learn a few things. In any case, the risk of drowning is very, very little. If you learn the right technique, you go through. In the sea swimming, no amount of technique is enough. It's not technique process. There is a certain state, a way of being. One has to know the broad outline, and then the sea carries you. So it is such a difference, and one may have read everything about swimming, and yet when he steps into the sea, the very first wave, I remember my own first brush with the sea, when I was told, this is how you have to be, just leave yourself, and it's so nice. And it was such a frightening experience. I felt the whole world had tumbled down, upside down, and I was looking for the floor and I couldn't find. I was looking for the surface of the sea and I couldn't see. The natural state is you look for the sky to orient yourself. There is neither sky nor earth. You see water all around. So it can be very frightening. So is this yoga, that you are suddenly thrust into the sea and you have to learn to just hold yourself. So Aurobindo is telling us other yogas give you a technique. Now the problem of giving technique is one develops the ahankara. So there are people who all their life have realized one thing, that they can get up at 4 o'clock and meditate for 1 hour. But what is the result of meditation? That doesn't matter. The ahankara, that every day morning I get up at 3:30 and from 4:30 to 6 p.m. I am sitting bolt straight. I am doing so many times this pranayam. This is ahankara, and Aurobindo is reminding us, give you ahankara, the satisfaction of feeling that you are doing something. And then, to leave no ambiguity, he says, so many more pranayamas today, so much longer a time for the asana, so many more repetitions of the japa, so much done, so much definite progress marked. So one feels if from 1 hour of pranayam, or let's say start with more realistic 10 minutes of pranayam to 45 minutes, one feels one has progressed. But it has given nothing but a little more energy, which very often manifests as high blood pressure. Because this energy through pranayama was released in ancient times because the rishis had a life where a lot of physical labor was required, and by the tapasya they could turn this energy for higher purposes. But if one throws tremendous energy into the physical system, which is neither busy with physical activity nor is turning this energy upward, then the only other result is that it can lead to high blood pressure. So this is not, this is really semi-seriously, certain pranayamas can do that. Nadi Shuddhi and Anulom Vilom are fine. But nevertheless, they should not be confused with spiritual practices. Very often we think pranayama and asana, even meditation and japas are spiritual practices. Aurobindo is reminding us, they give you this feeling that you are doing something. But once you have chosen this path, you must cleave to it. So what is the difference? He's telling us those are human methods. So far, evolution, spiritual evolution has taken place under these methods. They had a role to play, they had a purpose. They brought out something from the subliminal being. They brought us some touches, some glimpses of the higher worlds, some touch of the depth, but nothing more than that. That itself is so dazzling, yet that is not enough. So Aurobindo is telling us those are human methods, not the way that the infinite Shakti works, which moves silently, sometimes imperceptibly to its goal. For days, weeks, months, one may feel nothing is happening, and yet one has to live by faith and surrender that she is leading us. Advances here, seems to pause there, then mightily and triumphantly reveals the grandiose thing that it has done. doesn't he reveal again in the mother how Maheshwari works? She says, the human mind is baffled, it cannot follow her way. Her picking up of this line, then dropping that another, then picking all of them together and wielding out of all these differences a greater harmony. So these are the ways of the infinite. Artificial paths are like canals hewn by the intelligence of man. You travel easily, safely, surely, but from one given place to another. So we have very simple, like a swimming pool. This path is the broad and trackless ocean, by which you can travel widely to all parts of the world and are admitted to the freedom of the infinite. That's why it is such a dangerous and delightful path. It is dangerous because it's infinite. It requires tremendous faith and courage and tremendous surrender. And at the same time, it's delightful because at the end of the day, there is nothing which is left untouched or unseen. The whole panorama is held before us. All that you need. So, what is needed to sail on this ocean? If not pranayama, asana, and this and that practice. So, what should we have? All that you need are the ship, the steering wheel, the compass, the motive power, and a skillful captain. So these are the requirements of this yoga. If we have these, we go through. Your ship is the Brahma Vidya, the way shown by Mother in Aurobindo, the knowledge of the Brahman, the knowledge of the infinite. That is the ship. Faith is your steering wheel. So this yoga we cannot travel by any mental knowledge. It's Brahma Vidya, not Avidya, not mind's Vidya. They cannot carry us. Any amount of reasoning and doubt and analysis cannot carry us one step on this ocean because they are human Vidyas. But what we need is Brahma Vidya. There is a Shastra to arrive at the Brahma Jnana. It cannot be done by the way we study physics and biology and chemistry. They are all right for studying physics, biology, chemistry. And it can lead to absurd conclusion. Recently I was reading an article. Someone says, well, God is obviously not there because if He is there, He should be able to cure everybody immediately. Now this is a most primitive and juvenile way of looking at God. In that case, He would not even need creation. So these are kind of, when we try to understand that Vidya on the basis of the limited human mind and its Vidya. So, your ship is the Brahma Vidya. Faith is your steering wheel. Steering wheel is not reason. Because the powers that come in the way of yoga, Aurobindo would tell us, ambushes of powers which can assume even a form and a name divine, and they can carry the sadhak far away. Sometimes under the guise of miracles they can carry us far away when they assume a divine name. So faith is the steering wheel, not miracles. We cannot move on this path expecting one miracle after another. The day we see miracle is not happening, no, I am on the wrong road. I must always be on the road where instant miracles are shown. On the contrary, very often, when miracles are not there, then God is teasing us with faith. And faith is the steering wheel and not miracles. If faith is being diminished or is depending on outer things, then we should double check. Self-surrender is your compass. We cannot know which way we are going by any human effort. So what is the compass? Self-surrender. She is leading us. The motive power is she who makes, directs, and destroys the worlds at God's command. Who is our leader and queen and master and beloved and mother and everything? She who can create and destroy universes with a single act of her will. This is the faith that we must have and give the compass and the motive power in her hands. No more personal motives, but her will. But He has His own way of working and His own time for everything. Watch His way and wait for His time. Understand also the importance of accepting the Shastra and submitting to the Guru. And do not insist on the freedom of the individual intellect to follow its own fancies and preferences, which it calls reasonings, even before it is trained to discern or fit to reason. We do not know, we are infants. In fact, we are still in the womb. Even to say infant is a big thing. We are still in the womb. She is delivering us. And if we were to trust only our clouded reason, then we would fall and fall very miserably at the very first step of yoga. So self-surrender, trust in the Guru, obeying his guidance. This is the path he is showing us. It is much the fashion nowadays. Now Sri Aurobindo is reminding us. It's very interesting. Sri Aurobindo is talking of writing this 100 years back. And it looks now he is writing it of today, in the present context. It is much the fashion nowadays to indulge in metaphysical discussions and philosophical subtleties about Maya and Advaita and put them in the forefront, making them take the place of spiritual experience. So if one can give a very good lecture on Maya, then it's wonderful. But it's nothing about lecturing, it's not about compiling, it's not about reading, it's not about understanding, it's about living and walking, and there can be a world of difference. I know a small little instance of a friend of mine. He's a doctor. So he had read, of course, all of us read books and it's very easy to lecture. So when his grandfather was dying, his grandfather had read the Gita all his life like most traditional people. So he was dying and he was feeling attached to many things, So he told his grandfather, why are you so much, troubled by pain and all this? You have been reading the Gita. This body is nothing, it's a robe. Soul is real, etc., etc. Well, the grandfather died. He had no choice but to listen. Then the second day after his death, this man had it was not a dream, but a real experience. He suddenly saw his grandfather in front of him. And he started experiencing an excruciating pain in his heart. So much so that he felt he is going to die. He got up with perspiration and, that memory of the pain still lingering into his physical. And before he got up, his grandfather told him, you were telling me, this is the pain of death that one experiences. So, he got up horrified. So he was terrified and he went, picked up just to read any book of Sri Aurobindo, just to quieten himself. And he didn't realize he has picked up the Upanishads and he opened a page at random. And on the page was written, the Jiva is tied through 101 nadis, which are rent asunder. And this is the pain of death that one experiences. It was like Sri Aurobindo confirming it. Of course, this question was asked to mother. She said, it is not always necessary to have pain. But, it's so easy to speak, so difficult to walk. And Sri Aurobindo is asking us to walk. Because unless we walk, it's not enough to have metaphysical thought. Metaphysical knowledge has its place, but as a handmaid to spiritual experience. Showing it the way sometimes, but much more dependent on it and living upon its bounty. By itself, it is mere panditya. So what is the difference between metaphysical knowledge and the true experience? Metaphysical knowledge is a dry and barren thing. It's not a fertile soil. The seed cannot really sprout. The seed of spirituality cannot sprout in it. We may plough it 100 times and yet it remains dry and barren. But little water of divine love and the seed can sprout. So here he is saying that metaphysical knowledge is a dry and barren thing and more often a stumbling block than a help. Very often one can be satisfied. I know it because I have read it. But here it can be stumbling block. Having accepted this path, follow its Shastra without unnecessary doubt and questioning, keeping the mind plastic to the higher knowledge. This knowledge will come as the mind surrenders and becomes quiet, begins to aspire towards the light and peace, and doesn't throw away its energy in all kinds of useless information. Gripping firmly what is experienced, waiting for light where things are dark for you, taking without pride what help you can from the living guides who have already trod the path. Always patient. Never hastening to narrow conclusions, just by surface appearances. Oh, mother is angry with me. Why? Because today I asked something and just the opposite it happened. I prayed to mother, mother, please let my boss smile at you. And my boss was very angry. I asked for nice sabji in dining room and Karela was available. This is hasty conclusions. I expected this to happen, but something opposite happened. I expected that my will be done, but what is it? My foeman's will is done. Well, there is neither my will nor foeman's will. Both will pass away, and both will become means towards a higher divine will. So he's saying, never hastening to narrow conclusions, but waiting for a more complete experience and a fuller light, relying on the Jagat Guru who helps you from within. So this is the 4 aids. And he has given us the ship and the compass and the steering needle and made us even sit on the ship. It is only by our foolishness that we can get out of it.